Hi there, listener. Thank you so much for tuning into this podcast. Just so you know, this show contains explicit language and some possible adult themes. Listeners under 13 or anyone who could be offended by the subject matter are given caution. Hello, I'm Wesley Van Hoosen, and this is Good Food for Bad Friends. On this podcast, I'll have a different guest every week to talk about their history with food. Along with each episode, you can find recipes inspired by the featured guest on our website, goodfoodbadfriends.com. When I first met Matt Harvey, I knew that I had found a friend. He was cooking a very well-portioned steak with green beans when I walked in the sliding door of our bachelor house. As I shook his hand, I noticed he had a glass of wine at his side, and a book was open on the kitchen island. When I asked whose books were lining the lovely antique buffet table in the living room, I was told that most of them were Matt's. Books are typically a good indicator that I'll be friends with someone. Unless the subject is politics, I can agree to just about any kind of literature or nonfiction book discussion. I love to read, and I'm a complete bibliophile. Matt shares this love of books with me, and we immediately bonded over this as soon as I had a day off with him. We are also pretty avid vinyl collectors, and we boast very different but good collections so far. One of my best early memories of my friendship with Matt is going to the secondhand bookstore that wasn't too far from our house, scattering to our various favorite sections, and eventually finding each other back at the checkout counter comparing our finds. I always have seen Matt as my closest intellectual friend. I love discussing what I'm reading or listening to with him because he's always got an ear for what I have on my mind, and somehow we understand what each other is saying even though we may not know how to use our words sometimes. When it came to food, I was always cooking food for him that was probably not the healthiest. He was a vegetarian for much of the time that I was regularly cooking for him, so I found a way to make vegetarian food richer than it probably should have been. Beyond all that, though, Matt actually has a great appetite for vegetables and food that's nutritious and good for you, something that I've had to learn how to do with much chagrin. Many of these conversations I'm having with these people are the first time I'm really going in depth on their histories with food. Isn't it strange how you can be so close to friends, even family, and not know their full history about something so necessary and cherished as food? Asking a long-answered question would definitely be a conversation starter for Matt and I. Before I knew it, we were discussing our love of visiting Colorado, so I hit record just as the conversation was switching to the topic of food. So without further ado, here is my conversation with the next bad friend, an intellectual brother that I never had, my good friend, Matt Harvey.
I think it's the pros and cons. Colorado, you get Denver. Denver's cool, but I don't know. I feel like you lose a few things. Like Chicago's got some really awesome culture. I mean, food podcasts, we have really amazing food here in Chicago. I would argue like some of the best in the country. Whereas like Denver is like, I mean, the food, I'm sure there's some spots that are good, but everywhere I've been has just been like, it's decent. But then you come to Chicago and we've just got all these crazy like fusion and pizza and just like you name it, it's amazing.
It's a whole other level here. I mean, and I was just talking to Torres about that. And, you know, that's one thing that if I ever, because Dylan and I toy with the idea of like where we might go. And the one thing we always say is like, if we ever moved away from Chicago, that's one thing we'd miss is just the accessibility to so much good food and like any kind. Like truly, there is every kind of food under the moon here. I've never gotten bored. You know, it's not like my hometown where it's the same 7 restaurants.
Right. Yeah. You're not thumbing through 3 different menus, you know.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say you can become inundated with like choice though, which I think is like the only con is sometimes when I'm trying to find something to eat, I'm like, I could do Pan Asian, I could do Latin American, I could do Czechoslovakian, I could do like you name it, we've got it. And then it's like your brain melts. And you're like, all right, McDonald's it is.
That's the thing. Oh, that's so true. And I think that's a weird like anxiety for me. It's like I want to try all these new foods, but I don't want to risk like the restaurant being bad and not liking it. But then me being like, well, maybe I didn't give it a fair shot because I only got it from one place. And then, two $30 Uber Eats later, I'm like, I still don't like it. I should have just got fucking Taco Bell. But like, but it's like one of those things where, it is so crazy how available it is. And it's just such a, in a weird way, it's like not a lot of, I don't ever see a lot of like fusion-y places here. Cause I feel like that was a really popular trend maybe like 15 years ago, was like everything was Asian fusion, Tex-Mex fusion, anal fusion. It was all different shit. And it was like now people are just like, this is just a restaurant with the food that it serves and it's good food. And that's like, oh, well, for the most part. But I'm kind of glad that that's where restaurants kind of went because I don't know. I was never a big fusion guy, I guess.
Yeah, me either. I haven't eaten at many fusion places. I have eaten at one that I did particularly enjoy called, I think it was Altiro Latin Fusion in Roscoe Village, and they had some like just amazing tacos. It was like Latin and Asian fusion, and it was pretty good. It was like what you expect. You get a taco, and it would be like the meat would be marinated in like teriyaki or something like that.
Right.
It was pretty neat and fun, but I also agree. It's like you have to. I don't know. You have to be pretty adventurous, and sometimes the tastes can get kind of funky because you're trying too many things at once. Whereas, like, if I'm going to eat some Asian barbecue, instead of putting it in like Mexican styled rice, like just give me it as is. Just do it well, I guess.
For sure, yeah. I suppose as far as like, it's kind of like I'm definitely a purist on that kind of thing. Where it's like if I get Korean barbecue, I want Korean barbecue, not Korean barbecue and tortillas with cilantro. Like, it's still good, but like, I don't know. I'm definitely one where if I want to experience like a cultural food, I don't want to have it as like I want to have like the classics first before I venture into the fusions or the, whatever I don't know.
I feel you though, man. You just want it for what it is, you want to try it, especially if it's like a food or like a culture that you're not too familiar with or something that you haven't had like authentic cuisine from.
Exactly.
Like I feel like you're better served getting it from an authentic place before going to like some bizarre fusion place.
Yeah.
And like to boot, fusion is super expensive. I think just like adding fusion to the title of your restaurant automatically increases the $sign on Google.
Dude,
it's like
that's
add
so
$1
true.
sign if you put fusion.
Yeah. And especially if it's like if you specify the kind of Asian it is, it's like this is a Vietnamese fusion. That's now every plate is like $19, $20.
And you get like 2 bites. It's
and again, I'm not saying I'm not trying to be like that's a bad thing. The food is bad. The food could be fucking amazing, but it's like I know that these separate cultures do not feed people this little. Like like it's like go to a fuzz shop for Christ's sake. Like oh, we can curse on this podcast too. I forgot to text you that. It's not the dog show. We can let loose. So,
all right, hell yeah. Fuck yeah.
Well, so cool. Like that was a great like intro on your part. Thank you for building us in that way. That was great. Welcome to Good Food for Bad Friends. This is an OG bad friend. And I remember when I first met you, I walked into our house. So we lived in the house and you were cooking a very like well-portioned steak with green beans. And I was like, oh my God, this is like not a bachelor pad. This is some air of sophistication. And then that night we like hung out and I watched you and Nick play chess. And I was like, wow, I've really moved into like an astute household.
That is indeed one way to paint it.
Sure. It quickly devolved from there. When we all realized how like ridiculous we all were and like would get like fucked up and watch Veggie Tales.
I forgot that was God.
And then we went out and got ice cream and I poured like a glass of water on myself, I think. Like
I definitely remember that. We were just like sitting and you poured it on your sandal. Oh boy, those
Oh
were the
yeah, because I got
times.
ice cream on myself. And okay, I was so fucked up in the ice cream parlor. I literally got the first flavor I saw because I was like, I don't know, just give it. Like, it was butter pecan, which I hate, and I was
You
like,
don't like butter pecan? Oh man, I think
I don't know. I think I like. There was one. I don't know if you've ever had it. It was called Tin Roof Sundae. Have you ever had that ice
Tin
cream
Roof
before?
Sunday. No, it sounds
Maybe it's
sounds interesting though.
it's like butter pecan, but it's the pecan. It's pecan flavored ice cream, and it has huge shards of the like butter caramel in it. And I think it has like pecan pieces too. But I like that. And butter pecan is always, in my opinion, like a pale. Like it's like pales in comparison to what I grew up eating. But I always think it's the same. And I was too fucked up to realize what I was ordering. Because I was just like, I don't know, whatever. Just scoop some stuff in, man. Like,
I need to get out of here. I need to get out of here. Just give
dude,
me
they
the ice
gave me
cream.
so much water. Thank you, employees of the ice cream shop. What's that? Do you remember what that place was called?
I don't. I remember it was really bizarre because they had a bunch of like political propaganda
They had a
on the
spinning Uncle
walls.
Sam. I
Yeah,
remember that. And it
they
was
had
like
some like
disco
weird
lights.
caricatures of like Reagan.
Yeah. Oh, God.
And I wish I remember the name of it. That was such an interesting ice cream shop.
They're cash only. They're on Devon and Central. So they're really good. But if they're still
Shout
there.
out to the unnamed ice cream shop
But-
with political propaganda on
Yeah.
your walls.
But anyway, the whole point being you were the first person I met in the house. And our friendship is interesting because you were really one of the first friends I made that also reads books. Because none of my friends really are readers. I was really always the loner that would sit and read books. So you and I have more in common than just food. You and I also share a very similar taste, I would think, actually, in books, I would say. I don't know. Would you agree?
I would definitely agree. Yeah, that was I think the first thing we really bonded over. And I mean that's when you're meeting new people, you're always looking for like the one theme of connection. And
Exactly.
a lot of times nowadays it's like like video games, sports, TV, but it was pretty dope that you're into like some interesting literature. We were able to nerd out on a lot of stuff and still do to this day.
Yeah. It's great having friends that read. Just I don't know. It's such a thing where I think of reading as such a like soul, like a personal pleasure, but confiding in it or confiding about it with someone else who appreciates it as much as you do. That is like it's just such a like fulfilling feeling for me, just to be like, yes, I can sit and talk books because I know that they're gonna just be with me 100% when we sit and talk about books. Because so many people, when I do it, they're like, I'll tell them what I'm reading, and they're like, okay, whatever. Of course, my book collection lately has been very weird, so people are always like, what the fuck, like. But
What do you read now?
I'm just about more than halfway through A Night to Remember, which is the autobiographies collected about the sinking of the Titanic.
Interesting.
Which I never read, and it's firsthand accounts of what happened, and it's I'm comparing it to the movie in my mind as I read. It's actually it's really interesting to read about. A lot of stuff that I didn't know. There was like a lot of political stuff that in the press that happened. It was a lot of racist shit, which I didn't know, which is very interesting. I guess like in the American newspapers, surprise, surprise, of 1912, there was like an officer that drowned because he was prevented from getting out of his office by an unruly passenger. And in America, they said the passenger was black, just to make
bummer.
the story more sensational. And in Europe, it was never reported that way. And it's just like, that's shit I never really thought was interconnected. So I guess I learned something new today. Not a fun thing, but I mean,
interesting nonetheless.
It's like who would have thought that in that kind of a catastrophe where it was obviously human error, it was obviously it was a shipwreck. It wasn't like people trying to kill each other. They still managed to insert that in. I don't know. It's that. So that's what I'm reading right now. Are you reading anything at the moment?
That sounds pretty interesting, and I'm reading Red Rising. It's a sci-fi series. I've been on a big sci-fi like / fantasy kick this year.
For sure, yeah.
And I think it's just the theme of 2020 is like escapism, at least for myself. Just like
Yeah.
get me out of my 800 square foot apartment, whether it's like taking a walk or reading a fantasy novel, you know?
A great choice though, because you get to read about a different world, literally. Like, I feel like that in itself is kind of intrinsically satisfying. like,
Yeah,
like, oh, there's no COVID in this book's world. Like,
I try to avoid all pandemic related sci-fi, you know?
oh my God.
I'm just like, give me like the heroes and the villains. Let's make it simple this year. No nuance. Cool
I think you
it.
and I are opposite because I've shifted to all death-related nonfiction. like,
oh no,
it's like
I guess you're reading about the Titanic.
Titanic. I read a book about a woman who was like when she was training as a medical examiner in New York during 9/11. So that was a fun read. There was all sorts of like. I read a book called Severed, which is about famous people who lost their heads after they died. It's a great book. It's
that
so
sounds
good.
pretty optimistic, man.
Yeah.
No, that's a beach read for sure.
The next book I'm audiobooking. I'm audiobooking another shipwreck book. It's about the sinking of the Lusitania, which is the one that the German U-bomber sunk in World War One. So that's World War One. Yeah. But that's my audiobook right now. And then I think my next book is like The Science of Fear. Like, I don't know. I think
They're
I fully
all
embraced
bangers, all
a
around.
pandemic-driven literature choice. Well, let's get to these questions because I'm dying to know all these things about you. So I've been telling everyone I've been writing the cookbook with all of you in it, and I started to kind of catch real writer's block. And I was like, I know what I cook for everyone, but I don't know their backgrounds and how maybe I don't really see like the full circle of everything. And at first I was just going to do interviews, just going to sit with like a tape recorder, interrogate you, water torture. And, sorry, I thought you were going to laugh.
See, that made me laugh.
I was like, come on, that was a good joke.
I was just imagining water drip torture. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. But
really immersing myself.
Yeah, basically, I was just going to do like interviews and have all this footage just to listen through and write from. But now that we're in an age of podcasting, I was like, well, let's just make it into a show. So
why not? Why not? Tis the season, man. Let's do it.
Might kind of change them up as we go. What is your first food?
So there's two things that come to mind. Can I do a 2-part answer? Is that kosher?
Oh yeah.
So I'll go good and bad. So bad is Kraft macaroni and cheese.
Oh, we're in the same boat.
Dogs in it with hot dogs in it, man.
No.
My parents were just like, trying to feed their kids on a budget, whatever it was. But we ate a lot of mac and cheese, Kraft in particular, the blue box with hot dogs. And if I ever have to eat shitty mac and cheese with hot dogs, I could throw up all over myself. So that's just like that's a bad one. But that's my like good memory of food is my grandmother's handmade, home cooked chicken noodle soup, and she would do it where it was almost more of a stew because she would like hand roll the noodles nice and thick, and it was just like the chicken was shredded and cooked in chicken stock, and it was super creamy. It was amazing.
Damn, that sounds good.
I know, it's making me hungry, and I just ate a bunch of pizza.
I just ate a bunch of chicken fingers.
Hell yeah, dude.
I'm glad we're like 10-year-olds tonight.
I know. I just like ate 2 pieces of pizza, deep dish, so like, bigger pieces.
Nice.
And then
Did you order deep dish?
Yeah, we went to Lou's
nice.
Friday. Went in Chicago, I suppose.
Well, you got to get Lou's. Lou's or Giordano's. Those are my top 2.
Ooh, see, Bartoli's by my old place on Damon and Addison is like that's my
place
favorite
is so
pizza I've
good.
ever had. But
I forget that about
Lou's
that
will
place.
do. Lou's will do.
That's really interesting. You say the Kraft mac and cheese because that's totally a memory I have where you know what my bad memory of it is? I never minded it like when it was like young when it was like fresh out of the stove off the stove. We didn't put I have to ask. Did they put boiled hot dogs or just cut them up, put them in the mac and cheese heats it up?
Dude, to be honest, I don't even know.
Okay.
I want to say they probably just cut it up and then like put it in there.
That's
if I
better.
had to guess.
Yeah.
But boiled hot dogs, it just sounds like a Limp Bizkit song, you know?
It's they're disgusting. They're awful, but boiled hot dogs. But what my mom would do was she would cook like 2 boxes of it, and we'd never eat all of it. So she'd save it. But when you reheat Kraft mac and cheese, the once liquid around it has recongealed into like a hard, salty, like it basically it makes the pasta stick together, and it's not a sauce. It's almost like the salt is completely adhered into this like big fist of mac and cheese.
It's like the precursor to flubber.
Literally, and then if you put it in the microwave, it like sears all of it, and so it comes out and it's just this rubbery, like, you know, burnt, because the salt and the fake powdery cheese burns when you microwave it. Like, that's my bad memory of Kraft mac and cheese. Yeah, that sounds
terrible. That's worse than my memory. That's that's like, I imagine like burnt goo that like smells like plastic that's supposed to be cheese.
Yeah, and I think the box at one point even used to say like, if it does that, just add water. It's like, well, okay.
They're like, we know our shit's gross, so just like throw a little water in it and it'll grow right back.
But I do like chicken noodle soup with handmade pasta. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, it was super good. And like, side note, now that we're thinking of cheese, or at least you got me thinking about cheese, I did not like cheese, or at least I didn't think I liked cheese until, I don't know, I want to say like I was 20 until I started eating cheese again. Because like when I was a kid, I associated cheese with like Kraft macaroni and cheese or Velveeta cheese. My grandma would make this like Velveeta mac and cheese, which like, God bless her, amazing cook, but that macaroni was fucking gross, dude. And
Velveeta is like a molecule away from like plastic.
Oh, dude, just like comes out of the tube like toxic waste. It's fucking gross.
Well,
so I thought all cheese was like that. I don't know. I just like thought cheese was like Velveeta or American cheese.
Right.
So I just like went on living my life. Like whenever I get a hamburger at a restaurant or whatever it is, I'd be like, no cheese, please. And everybody thought I was super weird. And I just like continued to live my life that way. But then in college, my aunt gave me this, the name's slipping me, but it's like some kind of wine cheese. It like had this like hardened Merlot.
Oh shit.
Like it's like some kind of like fancy cheese, but it was like soaked in Merlot somehow. I don't know how it worked, but
was it like, I know what you're talking about. I've bought cheese before where it's like a hard cheese and it's been like the brine is soaked in Merlot or
exactly.
So it has it literally tastes like wine and cheese. And cheese.
It's amazing. It tastes so good. And it's
still
one of my
favorites. You used to buy it when we lived in the house, and I've always liked it after that because you always let me have some. And
that was like my go-to. Still is. I haven't bought it in a while, so I guess not quite. But I'm just like, I don't know. I eat a bunch of cheese now because apparently cheese is fucking awesome, and not all cheese is American cheese. So it took me a couple of years to get there. But
I didn't know there were other cheeses besides like cheddar or Colby. It's like those were the only 2 cheeses we ever had, and I never knew that there was Colby because it came mixed in a bag with cheddar. So
classic.
Yeah, so like we didn't grow up eating like charcuterie platters, and you know, if I can like, what's prosciutto is like the first. I thought it was like salami the first time I had it, so I got it on a sandwich. I didn't realize how salty it was, and like the fact that it's cured. It's not like a cooked meat. It's not like a sausage. But
man, I fucking love prosciutto.
I love it too, though. Now, yeah, I love it.
That reminds me, one of my buddies. So I'm gonna do a third now. Now that I'm thinking, you got me thinking about food.
Yeah,
which I guess is the point. But my buddy, I went to this cookout not too long ago, and he wrapped asparagus in prosciutto and stuffed the center with feta, and then he grilled it, and it was, my mouth just like did backflips. It was amazing.
If you really want to have like a flavor orgasm in your mouth, what you do is you do that, and then you dip it in balsamic vinegar.
Woo! Woo! That's crazy talk, man. That sounds amazing.
I've had just asparagus, raw asparagus wrapped in prosciutto and dunked in balsamic vinegar. Sometimes it's
raw asparagus.
Yeah, or maybe it's been like boiled, like just cooked a little bit, but it's not grilled or
okay.
or
I see.
But that's good. But man, with feta cheese too, shit.
It's just like your mouth goes through so many things. I can imagine with the balsamic, it's probably like just amazing because it's you got like kind of the Swedish with the salty, and oh man, I gotta try that.
Balsamic's weird. It goes with so many strange things. It goes really well with strawberries.
Yeah,
which is one thing. It
true.
makes strawberries taste more like strawberries. And it's very like just a dash of it is fine. And I always add it to fruit salad too because it adds this like it makes vanilla more intense. I found I don't know if it's just like the vinegariness of it kind of like boosts it, but yeah, vinegar is such a weird thing, and I hate this. I hate it just alone, but with things, it can totally just re-enhance all the flavors without salt.
It's such a unique taste, vinegar is. It's like very in its own category. I don't know. It's like, I mean, I guess like kimchi and like sauerkraut come to mind, but I guess those wouldn't. Well, do those have vinegar in it? Now I'm thinking about it. Are they just
kimchi
fermented?
They're just fermented. Kimchi is really I think it's mostly I think there's vinegar in kimchi though. Now that I think about it. I don't know. Actually, I've never really been a kimchi guy.
Kimchi's pretty funky, man. It's I just tried it not too long ago for the first time, and it was like better than I thought it was going to be. But I don't know if I would actively seek kimchi. Like if it was on like a weird hamburger or something, I'd probably be down. But like it's sauerkraut with a funk is like
and I've had it with things, and I've had like really intensely spicy kimchi. And that is like eye-watering, like, my eyes spicy. Like that's intense. But I don't know. I mean, with vinegar though, I always liked pickles, and I think that's where that kind of like appreciation for vinegariness. That's obviously with vinegar. Make like dill, and then you can make like bread and butter pickles, which are really good. Those have like chili peppers and onions
bread
in them.
And butter pickles are amazing. So
that's like a food fad. I feel like that was like a kind of a trendy food in the past couple of years was bread and butter pickles, because every restaurant in the city started serving them with burgers, like all of them, including the one I worked at. Like it was like that was like we made our own pickles, and they were so fucking good, and they were crunchy still too, because they weren't like macerated in a can or a jar for months, so they didn't have that kind of like sogginess to them. I don't know. I like pickles with a crunch for sure.
Me too. I'm not like the biggest pickle guy, but bread and butter pickles are just my favorite. I grew up eating those. My mom would always get like the Famous Dave's brand.
Ooh, we had a Famous Dave's in my hometown.
Hell yeah, man. That was my whole childhood. That's like where my parents would take me for special occasions, because I was just such a fatty, dude. I was just
me too.
Take me to the place with the most meat,
I was the kid from Up as a child. Like just the wide Asian kid.
I guess not much has changed for me. I'm still working with
I don't know. I mean, I think as adults it's different, because like you're a very healthy person. Like I know you as someone who like, you don't eat junk food all day, every day. You take care of yourself is what I'm trying to say. At least that's what
to some extent. It depends on the week, I think. But
as kids though, I feel like it's always it's like weirdly forgivable. Like
you're just like, yeah, you don't know any better. It's the sins of your father, It's
That's funny. Did you ever at Famous Dave's? Did you ever get like did you get the thing that came out on like a trash can lid?
Dude, yes, 100%. They would like, because they put down the paper, and then you get all the fucking meat, and it's on a trash can.
It was like brisket, pulled pork, chicken, corn, bread.
It's very apt because you feel like a fucking trash can after you eat it. But
my parents always bought the sauce. We always had Famous Dave's sauce in the house. That was constant. I didn't realize they sold their pickles though. That's really. I'll have to buy some. I don't
They're
know. Is
good,
there
man.
famous Dave's in Illinois? Like,
There definitely is. I don't know if there's any around the city, but there are definitely some out there.
for sure.
Dude, that's something. So what's your take on barbecue sauce? I feel like everybody's got, they're like, this is the one. You can't go wrong with this. It's always like, a lot of people are famous Dave's. A lot of people are like Sweet Baby Ray's. What's yours? Do you have one?
Well, I do like Sweet Baby Ray's. But that's like McDonald's barbecue sauce. Like
It really is.
It's the same as tangy barbecue that you get at like a cafeteria or any fucking hospital. Like it's the same. So that's like a generic go-to dipping barbecue sauce for me. But if I'm picking like barbecue sauce that will go on barbecue, probably Kansas City style barbecue sauce.
Heck yeah, I feel that.
Like I love Gates barbecue. I mean, everyone knows Gates in Kansas City. They're the most famous. But I like it because some sauces in the South are too sweet. My grandmother's barbecue sauce was way too vinegary. It was like kind of like your eyebrows would singe off. And I like KC because it's spicy. It's got real heat to it, but it's so like salty at the same time, and you taste the meat for what it is. It's not like doused in sauce, and you can't. It's just like eating protein with sauce, and like it's not like that. So, I'd say Kansas City style is my favorite.
Heck yeah,
yeah.
I feel that.
Sure.
I'm like not very partial to any one barbecue sauce. I don't eat barbecue very often. It's like not my favorite thing, except I've been eating it much more now. I don't know. I think my taste buds recently went through a change. It's really bizarre. Like I never used to like tomatoes, like just raw tomatoes. They're like one of my only vegetables that I can't or couldn't rather really dive into. But nowadays I'm just like eating those bitches raw. And barbecue sauce is in the same boat. I used to just be like, I'm good. Like I would eat it on the very obvious things like brisket and like wings or whatever, but wouldn't seek it past that. But now I'm like, put barbecue sauce on everything and then add a tomato to boot. I don't know what it is.
See, tomatoes are a thing where I think the older I get, the more I like them. So I think I'm kind of in that same boat because I hated them as a kid. I thought they were gross. But I like grape tomatoes. Like this, I like heirloom tomatoes quite a bit. I don't like the huge ones that go on burgers though. Those are like not the ones I'll go towards. But I feel like the older I get, the more I begin to appreciate what tomatoes are as a flavor and a texture. So at least I hope so, because they go in so many good things too. And I only ever knew them as like a pasta sauce. Like that's all I ever knew tomatoes for.
That's same here for the longest time. I was like, I like marinara, I like red sauces, but I don't know. Tomatoes to me now are just like a really good add-on to a lot of things. Just like, I don't like it as like a main thing, but I honestly can't think of many dishes that have tomatoes as a main thing. Usually it's like a compliment, except like what's the thing with like the mozzarella and the tomato and the balsamic?
That's like a caprese salad. Yeah,
there it is.
That though I feel like is also weirdly, like I think caprese salad is really rich because you're eating a very milky cheese with like kind of an earthy herb. I don't know. I love it, but I think it's always kind of too much for my palate. It's a lot of textures at the same time. But
I feel that. I like it. It's not something I seek out, but like it's a good, like it feels good in my mouth. I don't know. It tastes pretty good. Like my girlfriend's mother, or Hannah's mother, she made a version of that, but instead of mozzarella, she used cottage cheese. I see your face. You would think that. Because she served it to me. I'm like, this doesn't look like mozz, but I'm gonna try it. And I was eating it.
I went like full suspicious samurai on you there.
That was like, oh, what is that?
Like, cottage cheese. suppose it would work. It's cheese curds, like mini cheese curds, right?
It's like
Isn't
the
that what
same
cottage
thing,
cheese
except
is?
she like made it into it like fit into a little bowl. Like I think that was her idea. Is like this mixture that kind of made a salad, and it was pretty good, man. I don't know, I liked it, but I guess I do see what I understand, because when I knew it was cottage cheese, I was like, huh. But then I like chewed on it a little more, and I was like, okay, it's actually pretty good. It's like very similar to mozzarella.
Yeah, I feel like the flavor, it's a texture thing with cottage cheese because it's just a lot of
Slimy
lot of
cheese.
slimy, gooey. I always felt like I was eating the slime from Nickelodeon when I eat cottage cheese.
I can totally see that.
Because, like, if you watch it, sometimes the slime curdles. If you watch Nickelodeon too much, like I do as an adult, and it's like, oh god, I bet that fucking is cottage cheese. I bet they're torturing these young teenage stars with
Just smelling like hot
fucking
cheese.
cottage cheese.
Around.
I don't know. We're not sponsored by Nickelodeon, so I don't give a fuck. But
unless Nickelodeon, unless you want to sponsor our friend Wesley here.
I follow their YouTubers. Yeah, I don't know.
Nickelodeon shout out to Cottage Cheese Wesley over here.
Cottage Cheese Slime gonna host the Kids Choice Award.
Watch out, he's blowing up as we speak.
Imagine, I'd have to get so. Like, hey kids, what? No.
Watch out! Who's the wackiest of them all?
We're only on one channel, and you have to pay $200 a month to get it. So somewhere in our conversation, we started going on tangents and ended up talking about the ongoing pandemic. I don't want to make this a political show right off the bat, so I'll drop you off in the part of the conversation where we related back to sci-fi and fantasy novels.
Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous. It sucks that people are holding out on money that could be paid to people who need it right now simply based on party affiliation. It's like, come on, people. Like, yeah, it's not quote Game of Thrones, but to quote Game of Thrones, it's always like, loosely, I don't know. The whole series, Song of Fire and Ice, is based off of, the single quote in the first book, and it's like something along the lines of, the poor people or the villagers sit around and die while the elite or the wealthier, the rich families in the book play the Game of Thrones, and then all these other people suffer. And I feel like, obviously, an extreme example because it's from a fantasy book, but I think it's apt for what's happening now. It's like these people playing a game. Yeah. They're playing this like chess with each other, trying to gain power, control, and then all these people are suffering because of that.
I mean, I honestly, though, I think you bring up a great point, because I wouldn't throw fantasy out, because a lot of those books are based on, corruption and, people realizing that they're part of a system that doesn't benefit them. And I don't know. I think it's really interesting you bring that point up, because to me, sci-fi is such an escapist genre of realizing like what shouldn't happen in the world, if that makes sense.
Oh, totally. It's kind of they set up like 1984 comes to mind, or like A Brave New World. It's these people designing dystopian.
I think of Logan's Run. The sci-fi movie. That's a movie.
I've never seen it.
It's a very weird movie from the 70s.
Fair enough. I'm gonna have to watch it. 70s
sci-fi,
now.
Maybe early 80s, which is even worse.
Oh god, dude. I know our opinions on the 80s differ quite a bit here.
I think just music. I think we both agree that the 80s was, in retrospect, a pretty terrible decade.
Everybody was just on cocaine and thought it was awesome. I think that's
everyone was
80s
on cocaine,
in a nutshell.
Eating jelly beans. Everyone fucking. There was a lot of serial killers in the 1980s, like an unprecedented amount in that decade. Like,
yeah,
it was
what's
weird
up with
decade.
That? Why was that? Hannah has been on like for the past couple of years now. One of the like a murder podcast kick, and she's learning about all these serial killers, and it just seems like they fall between like the 60s to the 80s. It's just like this prime time for all these serial killers.
The conspiracy theorist to me, and this really isn't conspiracy anymore, is that a lot of those people were victims of MK Ultra, and they were
fascinating.
They were, or they had stuff done to them. Actually, the other thing that's now really been proven is that a lot of them sustained very serious head trauma as a child. Like one kid fell out of a swing and he got like a really severe concussion and he was never quite the same afterwards. And then as an adult, he became a serial killer. And it was just because his brain literally kind of just suffered and it didn't do the things it didn't have the filters and emotions in place where it should have. And the scientists are like, it's probably from this untreated concussion he had as a child. And it's
so
fucking
interesting.
crazy. Yeah. And
Just,
neurology, neurology itself and psychology is so like, it's so, weirdly predictable by book, but it's also very undiscovered. And
yeah, very much so. I feel like we're learning something new every day about the mind. It's just, it blows my mind how malleable just human nature is, or like our minds are, it's like we're learning all these new things. And things like addictions are something that like comes out and grips people in these really weird ways that we can't understand, but then we learn how certain things can break those addictions in like a single moment.
Yeah.
We were watching something last night about these people partaking in like ayahuasca ceremonies.
Oh my God. I just listened to a podcast about a guy who was like a kind of a wanderer, did ayahuasca stuff, and he like conned people, and I think he ended up killing a couple people. And that was how he literally just lost his mind. Like he legit
right.
lost his mind.
Taking people's money and drinking ayahuasca,
Yeah, and it was like he was part of like a retreat that people like the elite would go on to do ayahuasca treatments. I mean,
wild.
Just weird shit. Like, meanwhile, I'm, making drip coffee and eating cheese in my underwear. Like, that shows you where I'm at in my life. Like,
hey, I guess you're not trying to con people into ayahuasca ceremonies.
Yeah, no.
I kind of have a funny story about that. One time, I can't remember. I was in Chicago, so probably like 3 or 4 years ago. It's like when I first moved to Chicago, still kind of unfamiliar territory.
Yeah.
Nick was DJing at a bar. I went to the bar, had some drinks, got drunk, and I met this chick there, and we got to talking, and she's telling me how she just finished doing this crazy ayahuasca retreat. She's like, it changed my life, all these crazy things. She's like, do you want to do it? She's like, I can get you connected with somebody who can like take you on this thing. And I was like, yeah, for sure. Let's fucking do it. I was drunk. I was ready. So she's like, okay, well, I need your email. And she's like, this guy, he comes from Peru, and they do it on Michigan Avenue in an apartment, somebody's apartment. And they do the ceremony there, and you got to pay some money to do it. And at the time, I was like, totally, here's my personal email. Let's fucking do this thing. So I get an email a few days later, and it's from just kind of like a random Gmail account. And they're like, hey, so-and-so recommended you. You just need to PayPal us like, I can't remember the exact number, but I want to say it was around $3,000.
Jesus Christ.
And then they're like, we come quarterly, so you got to pay us this money and you go. And then I was like, I got the email and I was like, reading, I'm like, what the fuck is this person talking about? I'm like, oh my God, this is the girl from the bar who was setting me up with an ayahuasca ceremony.
Cult that I fucking signed up for while I was
like,
drunk.
what is this? It was wild. I never ended up going to it.
That's funny. That's like almost like when you like sign up for something on like campus day and you forget about it. And then all of a sudden you have like 30 emails from these weird signups you got free swag. And you're like, oh fuck. Like that's right. That's funny. I feel like you've told me that story, but it was like around a bonfire and like we were in the house and I know you've told me that story, but I didn't know that like you actually got an email. I just thought you met a girl that like did ayahuasca and you were like, okay, and you just like went away. Like,
no, it was a whole thing. I don't know. I have my Gmail up and I'm like trying to find it. I don't know what I would search for, but
just ayahuasca.
Yeah, I know. It was like a pretty low key. It was almost like it was in line with like texting a drug dealer. It was just like very like, hey, so-and-so referred you to our thing. Like, you got to PayPal me at this location.
Right.
Who knows if it was an actual ayahuasca ceremony? Like, could have totally just been a scam. Just like this chick's paid. They'd be like, go find some dude who looks like a hippie and tell them you're going to bring them to an ayahuasca ceremony or something and tell them to PayPal me, you know?
Oh man. All right. I am gonna swing us back into food.
Sure.
here.
Yeah. That was a rabbit hole.
It's fine. I mean, we haven't really like sat and talked in a long time too, so it's totally fine.
Yeah. This is it's a catch up mechanic.
Oh yeah. So my next question that was on my list was, what was something common that you would eat growing up in your house, kind of like any day of the week, you know, home from school, just got to get dinner out.
Sure. So a big one was spaghetti. I guess technically like a bolognese of sorts. But that was one, like, you know, my mom was trying to feed. I had 2 other siblings and my dad, and we all played sports and we're busy. So it was like a very easy, tasty meal she can make. So like spaghetti and garlic bread is what comes to mind for that.
For sure.
Pretty good stuff. Like, I don't know if my mom's ever going to hear this, and this is my second beer, aka my third beer. So my mom wasn't the best cook, I'll be honest. So I grew up with some very, like, I don't know, just kind of like home style, like what a mom can cook to feed her kids kind of thing.
Sure.
So I didn't have any really,
I'm
like,
taking notes too. That's why I'm turning away. Just so
you're good. No, you're
notes,
good.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, my mom has some good recipes and some good meals, but good food didn't really come into my life until like my dad, per Rachel Ray, started getting like really good at cooking. So like growing up, my mom was like just making those just staples like spaghetti, hamburgers, you know, those kind of things.
Yeah.
Then my dad got like the bug because he started watching Rachel Ray, and then all of a sudden he started chefing it up. So then my dad started making all these crazy meals. So my dad is actually the good cook in the family.
That's
Sorry,
really
Mom,
funny.
if you ever hear this. I love you, but
it's okay.
not your food.
It's okay. Is that your dad learned from Rachel Ray? Because that's a very like OG classic Food Network, like just at its best, I think, and also kind of like what I miss about food television, because we don't get that anymore. It's all, you know, television, and there's like no cooking on Food Network anymore. So I think it's really cool that your parent, I don't know, I'd be interested to know if like your dad was like, you know, this is like an educational tool, not just entertainment, and, you know, took full advantage of that. And I think that's really awesome, because, you know, I think people kind of don't like admitting they learned to cook from the Food Network. But
yeah, I don't know if you'd admit it to this day, but I know at the time the food changed drastically. Like it was later in high school. I think it was like a junior or senior, and I just remember, you know, because again, my mom was like, you know, she's a stay-at-home mom, so she was always cooking the meals, and they were just the very staples. You know, she would run through the normal stuff every week, and at a certain point when my dad started cooking more, it just changed because he's doing all these super funky recipes and like funky in a good way, and they were just stuff he was learning on TV, or he would get inspired by something he would see, and then he would create his own little thing, because now his whole thing is he like goes to the grocery store, picks up some random ingredients, and then he's just like, okay, what are we gonna make? Which is kind of how I cook now. I learned to cook from him a little bit from him. And that creativity kind of stems from him. It's just like, you know, he could look in a cabinet and see what's in there and say, okay, we can make something with this. We got some meat, we got some rice, we got some spices. Let's experiment. So that's when food started getting fun in my home, as he just started making all these weird meals and recipes. Some weren't very good, because they were pretty experimental, but some were just amazing and are still around today, you know.
She did teach a lot of people how to get dinner on the table literally in a half hour for their family, and, you know, doing it in a way that was actually like healthy and somewhat nutritious too, not. And, you know, I just think it's so cool that, you know, Food Network is just like how a lot of people learn, and they're so kind of ashamed at that. And I'm like, I learned from the Food Network. Like, are you kidding? I think when I turned my TV on, it was pre-programmed to turn on to the Food Network.
That makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, I feel like, as I know you as Wesley, I identify food with Wesley. Like, You
Oh,
know,
thank you.
it's
I
it's
appreciate that.
when we lived together in McAlpin or on McAlpin, it was your way of connecting with us is like I would come home and you'd be like, dude, I just made 5 different meals, dig in, and it was like, oh my god, this is amazing.
Well, the funny thing was too, it was the first time I was put in a situation where there wasn't like a backbone of something that kind of made it me be friends with someone. Like when you're doing theater, you kind of have to be friends with everybody because if you're not, it's miserable. And so for me, moving into the house, I was like, okay, I don't have theater, I don't have this or that, but it's like I do know how to cook, and I hopefully I can kind of win them over if I just cook for them. And to me, cooking was also like the ultimate show of like, I don't know, like friendship or affection. It was like, I don't cook for just anybody. And so it's like I cooking for people who I'm sharing a home with, wanting to kind of make a home with for the time being. I just figured it would be the best way to kind of be like, well, maybe they'll like me if I cook a lot.
Hey, well, it worked. The
Yeah.
charm rubbed off on us
Well,
because we are
good.
obviously still homies, and I think the food was a big motivator in the beginning because you were very thoughtful with it too, which I really appreciated. Like if you know, would hear something like, I'm like, oh shit, I got a crazy day going on, I'm not gonna have time to get food. You would pick up on those things, and then I would come home and you'd like make pasta or something, and it was just a very thoughtful way of like connecting with us, and I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. I really just wanted to show that I don't know. I guess that's just the way I am as far as like in our house growing up, our schedules were so crazy, and we still wanted to have a time to like sit and talk with each other. So that was kind of the mode of that. It was like if someone can't cook, just someone else cook and do it. And I don't know. I also just enjoyed it thoroughly. Like it was always nice because I was learning myself how to cook because I cooked like desserts for 5 years, 10 years. And it's like, I don't really know how to cook real food. Like, so it was a total learning experience for me. And it was always fun to get to see y'all eat and approve of something or disapprove too. I don't know if you guys ever disapproved of a dish. I always wanted to make something on purpose so you would disapprove.
Just to test it, just to be like, are they just being nice?
Are they just being nice? One time I did make something that really was bad, and Aaron ate it. He's like, yeah, this is not a keeper. And I'm like, yeah, okay. So they're at least, I know that they're being real. But it's, yeah, and I love doing it. It was just a nice way of like learning for myself, but also having guinea pigs to try all the food.
It was fun being a guinea pig. I'll tell you that much. It was nice to just eat a bunch of food.
It was a good time.
It's kind of, food is just such a connector. I mean, I feel it's the most, I don't know. It's like an ancient part of humanity. Is like no matter what we are doing as a society, as a collective, like as a friend group or family, it's usually centered around food. Even to the hunter and gatherer stage, it's people working to get food to cook it so people could eat to live. And I think that translates nowadays to, people are getting together because you got to eat, and you can add creativity to that. You could add thoughtfulness to that. It's just a pretty neat format to create or to give. It's really translates to everybody. Like, like that's something I always think of as like when I go to family dinners and stuff like that, oftentimes my family and I don't agree on like politics or music or whatever it is, but one thing we can agree on is a good meal. Yeah. And I think that's a pretty powerful thing.
Yeah, and I think that that's something that I totally share that opinion. It's something where food is an equalizer. It's in a weird way. I used to use food as a way to like apologize to people because it's just so effective because it's like you can say you're sorry all you want, but if I bake you a fucking cake, I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's time, there's hours put into that.
There's time and effort put into that, and so I always think food is such a great it's such a great tool in a weird way to bring people together, to calm the animosity if there is any. I don't know. It's magical in that way, and I totally agree with you. And I love that our group of friends especially are all food people.
Yeah, totally.
We don't really have anyone in the group that doesn't enjoy food thoroughly in some way. So I think that's another huge motivator for me. It's like, I know if I fucking throw down, these people are going to throw right back. So it's like,
absolutely.
It's like, I don't have to worry about dishes because that shit is gone. Like, so.
Yeah, dude, we maxed. I mean, that's like our Friendsgiving. Plural Friendsgivings. I mean, everybody just puts it all in there, man. Everybody's making something so crazy and so tasty.
It's so fun. I'm gonna miss Famsgiving this year. I told you about. Did I tell you about this or no?
I think so. Maybe I don't know.
Josh kind of came up with it too. Josh had the idea, and I totally thought it was a great idea. He said that we should do just like mini Famsgivings at like 6 or 7 people at someone's house. We all get tested beforehand, whatnot. Maybe even fewer. But I was like, well, what if we just Skype everyone and we have one big, like, Famsgiving, but it's like weirdly local from all of the different, like, it's like via Taylor, via this person. But the other idea that I had was that I feel weird not making a turkey. So I was thinking about making 3 turkeys and donating turkey to everyone in the group for their Thanksgiving. And
I
I'm
think
like,
that's an amazing idea.
just so you guys have the turkey,
enjoy your turkey.
Like it's just like I legit, I kind of got upset. Dylan and I were talking about it. I was like, I don't feel right not cooking that much food for the group. It's just not right if I don't do it. And so I was like, there might be in the fucking Bad Friends Do Quarantine WhatsApp, there might be one that says like, hey, I'm gonna cook a fuckload of turkey and just come and get it. Like,
dude, it'll be
on the porch. I'll social distance,
man.
wave at you. Like,
that sounds amazing.
I don't know. I just was good. I kind of wanted to run it by someone since we came up with it, because I was like, I think people might go for it, but I don't know.
Dude, I mean, sign me up. Food from you for Thanksgiving. Hell yeah, let's do it, brother.
It's got the Famsgiving when we all come back from this pandemic is going to be goddamn insane. That's going to be all the holidays, all of them are going to be like twice as intense. Like,
they really are going to be. It's just going to be just absolute craziness, just because, of course, we haven't seen each other in a group capacity in a long time.
Yeah,
and just,
time.
Yeah, it's been too long. But and then you have of course, just our group hanging out. The average craziness that happens from that. It'll be a crazy time.
Oh man, I'm hoping Christmas 2021, because that's what it's kind of looking like.
Mark it on your calendars. 2 years from now.
God, my fucking calendars. I bought such cute calendars for such a terrible fucking year.
Yeah.
So let's see. So you talked about how your dad really picked up the food stuff as you got older, just by learning from TV and then wanting to try experimenting with things himself. And I think that's really cool that kind of like even later, because are you the oldest?
I'm not. I'm the middle child.
You're
I have a younger brother
okay.
and then an older sister.
Sure. Oh, that's right. Okay. But I still think that's cool though, that even though you were in high school, you said that the pattern started to change, because I feel like that's really rare. Because I feel like once a parent hits their cooking button, it's the same. Like it does not
it's just
really
like what
evolve.
they know.
Yeah, and it's
something.
It's what's there, and it's it may not be the best, but it gets your kids fed, and that's what matters. Though I mean, I think the priorities totally change sometimes, and all the time, maybe even. I don't know. I don't have kids, but none of us have kids. But like, I don't know. I feel like the priority really would change for me. Like, I'm tired of trying to figure out how to cook stuff. I just want to get food there. So I think it's really cool your dad was like, hey, we could be having all this other different kinds of food. But so like on the opposite side of that, what was your favorite thing to eat, like at a restaurant, or like did you have a favorite restaurant or place to go out to that was like, yes, we're getting out of the house, going out to eat, fuck yeah?
Is this when I was a kid or like growing up?
Growing up as a kid, yeah, just like childhood in general.
I can't think of a very particular place. I grew up in like small town Illinois, so there wasn't any like amazing places. But in terms of like type of food, I've always been a big hamburger guy.
Sure.
I love hamburgers. So really anywhere I can get a good hamburger, even back then, I was just all about that.
That's a solid choice though. That's like a quintessential thing.
God, hamburgers are so good because there's so many varieties of hamburgers. You know, you can get like just a cheddar burger, right? Just like your plain shit, like hamburger can be amazing, but then you can get real weird and even put like peanut butter on your hamburger and it somehow tastes amazing.
Like an Elvis burger. I think I had an Elvis burger at the Bad Apple, the burger place that's in Lincoln Square.
Yeah.
Yeah, shout out. But like,
Bad Apple rules, man. Some of the best hamburgers in the city, I swear.
I'm trying. Do you like blue cheeseburgers?
You know, I do and I don't. I'm not the biggest fan of blue cheese, but if it's done well, I can get behind it.
For sure. Okay. I do remember when we were in Vegas having a lot of the burgers there. We ate a lot of burgers in Vegas.
Hell yeah. It's like a good drunk food. At least when I'm drunk, I'm like, give me chicken fingers or give me hamburgers. I'm very American in that way.
Yeah, for sure. Are you like, do you like fries with a burger or onion rings? Or do you have some people have different sides than just fries?
Fries all the way. I think if I really had to pick a favorite food of all time, it would probably be French fries. Like, you know, I just love French fries. I don't know what it is. It's something about fried potatoes. I'm about it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I think, too, French fries are one of those weird things that go with more. They can go from the most basic, like, kind of trashy food all the way up to eating them under a steak. And they're still fucking good. Like, it doesn't change, like, how good they are based on what they go with. And I love fries. I don't know. I do like onion rings, though. And I think that that's a very underrated side. But it only goes with certain things. Like,
yeah, onion rings, I got to be in the mood for them. But like you said, French fries are just, they're just so good. But I'm curious if that's because they're served with basically all fast food. You know, like, have I been indoctrinated to think fries are
I was just literally about to say, we've been
McDonald's
indoctrinated.
Effect, you know? But
the Burger King, you really can't have it your way because you don't have free will.
You only have fries. That's it. Just shovel the fries into your car.
I think that's a great point, though, because, no fast food place really highlights other stuff. I mean, they probably have it, but it's like, no, everything just automatically comes with fries because it's easy and it's a cheap thing to make, and they're undeniably good.
So tasty, man. Like, I love a lot of other food. I mean, French fries are just my favorite, like, mouth pleasure food. I think.
Sure, yeah.
Fried food in general, you can't beat it. It just always tastes good.
It is. And I honestly think that people are, I feel like it's a deeper response than just liking deep fried food. I feel like it's sort of like our brain. There's a part of our brain that it's like we respond to the fried food. Our endorphins only come out with fried food, like, and
it's a mechanism for salt. You know, it's just a way to get salt into my body.
For sure. Oh my god, I love salt.
Dude, me too. It's a problem. God. I think
it's a one thing I never thought I would like too, because growing up, my parents are in the we don't salt our food generation.
Classic.
And so when I discovered salt, I always thought I would hate it, but then I had it and I was like, wow, this makes everything taste fucking good. Like,
I know everything's got, oh man, I don't know what flavor profile salt falls under. Would that be like umami?
I think I think salt is sort of one of those things where it's not necessarily pleasing on its own, but it's an activator. Because it brings flavors out and then kind of like supports them. I don't know. I've always thought of salt as like a baseline, but then all of like the herbs or spices or whatever you put into that, their flavors are highlighted even more, which creates the like umami flavors or the sour, sweet, pungent. I don't know what they all are. I forget. But like, I think salt really kind of is, a part of all those groups, just because you put it in baked goods too to highlight the sugary flavors, because salt plays a big role in baked goods.
Cookies, I forget
And
about that.
yeah, and and like salted caramel, salted chocolate. Salted chocolate is okay, but salted caramel is fucking amazing.
Dude,
Like,
you're
oh,
telling me I feel like, so using Hannah and myself as an example, I am all about like dark chocolate, caramely,
yeah,
vanilla ice cream in my mouth.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Just like rich, for lack of a better word,
Oh yeah, for sure.
description, just like desserts. Whereas Hannah is just like not about that. She's very into like fruity and tart. Like she would rather have a sorbet over like some Ben and Jerry's
Oh hell no.
caramel sutra,
Oh,
delicious.
caramel
Just
sutra. That's a good one. I like fucking I like the cores a lot, like the brownie batter core one.
yeah, heck
Um
yeah.
oh man, caramel sutra. Yeah, no, I totally see what you're saying though. I feel like I'll eat a fruity dessert and like at a guest house, and then I'll go to Baskin Robbins and get fucking like
Just
I'll draw on the way home. It's like, can I have a large Reese's peanut butter blast asshole, please? Like,
dude, I feel it. I feel like, I mean, I think people just obviously have different palates, and I think desserts can generally be categorized into like the rich, kind of like
and
chocolatey,
you like
caramely.
the richest chocolatey cake because you like red velvet. That's
Sure,
your birthday cake
that
that
is
I
my
make for
favorite.
you.
I love
And
red
that is
velvet.
like that's the big mama of the rich chocolate
That
cakes.
is,
Like,
oh man, it is so good, man. Red velvet and cheesecake are just like two of my favorite desserts of all
yeah,
time.
cheesecake is I like cheesecake over red velvet, but cheesecake, man, oh, if it gets to be kind of like really experimental, like Cheesecake Factory level cheesecake, it can be kind of too much. But I like just a good old fashioned New York style cheesecake, just like plain. Like,
I can get into that. I like when it gets like some chocolate and caramel on there, but honestly, like I'm happy with just a plain cheesecake. I just something
yeah.
about it, the texture, the taste, the fact that it's cold. I'm a big fan of cold
Yeah, it's
food.
a great. Yeah, that's true. Even though it has to bake at an ungodly temperature and then sit with an open oven door overnight. Baking
Oh no
cheesecake
way! I
is a
did not
winter
know that.
affair. Yeah. You
That
have
sounds like a whole
so
thing.
the way see mine's different though because I don't use whipped cream in mine. I use sour cream. 'Cause it's like, let's make it more dense. Like, but so because mine's an Italian style, so it's a little more flat and rich, but I don't put ricotta in because I that's too much. But when you make it, you have to put it in a water bath. So you make the cheesecake thing, line it with foil, put it in a big like roasting pan, fill it up halfway with boiling water, put that in the oven, and so it cooks evenly without cracking if you put it in a water bath because it steam cooks instead of just dry cooks in an oven. And then you have to take it out, let it cool, or no, you have to turn the oven off, leave the oven door open, and let it sit overnight in the oven to cool down.
Man, that is a whole thing.
Yeah,
I
so
think I'm gonna appreciate cheesecake a lot more from
it's
here on out.
intense. And Derek is the only one in our group, thank God, that requests cheesecake. And like red velvet, I'll make any day over a cheesecake. But cheesecake that's a process. It's one you have to, if you fuck it up, you're fucked. Like, but I do love a good fucking cheesecake too. I bought
Oh
cheesecake
yeah.
bites at Target because I was like, my unemployment came.
Ah,
Yay.
time to get cheesecake bites. Oh yeah, dude. I'm for that. I'm
um
definitely for that.
For sure. So when you started to kind of venture out, so you mentioned like when you were 20, you started to gain your love of cheese more. Were there other foods as you got older into adulthood that you discovered and you really were like, yes, I can totally get behind this kind of food?
Yeah, absolutely. Mostly, I mean, my taste stayed pretty tame, or I guess vanilla, up until I moved to Chicago. And then when I came to Chicago, it just like exploded because you get to try, like we are talking about at the beginning of all this. It's just
Yeah,
like
yeah.
there's so many amazing places to try. And Thai food is a really big one that I just absolutely love now. Malaysian food, I love drunken noodles. Drunken
Those are
noodles
good.
is like
Yeah.
my it's like my desert island food, man. I really like drunken noodles. I love curry. I love Indian and Pakistani food. There's just so many. I think kind of like a Pan Asian style is where I'm at. Like I love
Yeah,
curries. Curry is like my ultimate food. I love
I love
turmeric
curry.
and what's the other thing they put in
Garam
curry?
masala and uh well there's like there's tons of spices in curry. I mean, and they all vary, but a lot of it's like chili powder. Cumin is a
Cumin
big
and
one.
turmeric is that's what I was
Yeah,
looking for.
those are
Those
kind of the
two,
like turmeric is the like gold colored one, and that
right?
turns that's like a. I almost use that more as a food dye than I do an herb. But it does have a kind of like earthy flavor.
It does.
Um,
Paired with cumin, it makes
it's
a really just amazing spice.
yeah,
I put that
it's
on my
very
chicken
grassy. It's
often.
very almost like kind of like dill, but like a very like dark evil dill.
Yeah. I love the combo. I have this
It's
like
good. It is
curry
good. Yeah,
mix we got from Whole Foods, and I think it's just basically cumin, garlic, turmeric, and then salt.
yeah,
And that is just enough for me to just like I'll like douse my chicken in it,
for
and I
sure.
could just eat that for days. It's so good.
I do a lot of the see at my grocery store we have these cans that are it's just the prepared curry powder or like the curry like seasoning blends, and it's a
Sure.
can of it. It's like not even a quarter of a cup of it, and it sits in olive oil, and you stir fry all of these seasonings together in like this can, and then you add in the coconut milk, and that makes a curry sauce.
Oh, that
And
sounds
then you put on,
amazing.
it's so fucking good. And it's like I can't find this brand on Amazon. I can only find it at Tony's, my grocery store, over on like Lincoln
Dude,
and Foster. That's the
that
only place I
Tony's
can
is
find it.
so good. That Tony's is the plug. That is
I
like one
love
of
that
my
grocery
favorite.
store. Oh my god, I'm gonna be so sad when we move out of this neighborhood. I'm like, I'm still gonna go to Tony's. Like,
We have one near us in Logan. There's
yeah, that's the original one. That's the big one. That's the bigger one too. I think.
it's I think yours is a smidge bigger.
Oh,
Um but it's about the same size. Theirs is okay. It's all right. It's
yeah,
not as good as the one by you. The one by you is just like amazing. And something that I've noticed is the quality of meat there. It's so affordable and so good. That's
yeah,
something I noticed. And it was actually the first time I went there. Unfortunately, I guess is during COVID times because all the other grocery stores were like out of shit. But the Tony's by you had stuff, and I got a bunch of like chicken and meat.
yeah.
It was like when everybody was freaking out about COVID and thought, world's gonna end and we weren't gonna have any
Mm-hmm.
groceries. I was a part of that camp as well, I suppose. So I went to get a bunch of stuff, and I
Yeah.
was just so pleasantly surprised at how good the chicken was for how much I paid. I was like pennies on the dollar for this bulk amount of chicken, and it tasted
Yeah,
amazing.
it's a real difference because like Jewel is horrendously overpriced,
Oh God, like
and oh
it's
god,
terrible. I mean, because especially when you have places like Aldi where they have just amazing prices and the quality of their food, including their meat, is just really great.
yeah. I always buy whole chickens at Aldi. I always think it's really cheap to get whole chickens there. Whole chickens I don't mind, but when it's all cut up, I like Tony's just because it's I don't know, it's pretty cheap there. But also, there's no pharmacy in that grocery store, so it's literally just a grocery store. Like, there's no like giant weird hardware section that really it's they didn't Walmartify that grocery
Right.
store.
It just stayed for food. It was
Yeah,
for
so
what
it's
it was
like
designed for.
exactly. So it's nice that when you go there, you don't have to contend with like giant lines of people waiting for prescriptions, and it's not like a warehouse. It's just like a small neighborhood grocery store that has their international section's the best though. I mean,
Oh yeah,
it's
that's
it's
the
a, it's a one-stop shop store, which is really nice on that front. But that's
yeah,
so funny
Tony's is
that
the
you like
plug.
that Tony's. It's like everyone I know either loves or hates that Tony's. I'm like, why would you hate it? It's such a nice
Yeah,
store.
whoever
Like,
hates it's foolish because I'm like they have so many good deals. It's just yeah. I
yeah,
learned about it way too late because I mean it was God, I moved mid-April and I learned
sure,
about it in March, but I just kept going back and I'm like, this place is awesome. And then every time we're in the neighborhood, we always, if we have time, we'll stop by there and get some food,
yeah,
especially the meat. I'm just like a really big fan of their meat because,
yeah.
again, for like the price, it's just such great quality,
It is, yeah, and
especially for
it's
chicken. Like you can get some
yeah,
cheap quality chicken and it's like when you cook it, it turns out to be rubbery.
Yeah, you can go to the Cermak market and buy a chicken breast that's the size of what a chicken was 20 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my god. I remember Chris brought those over and was like, "What the fuck is that? Is that a whole chicken?" Like,
and it's like really rubbery.
He's
and
like,
gross.
"It's just the breast." I'm like, "What?" Like, what? I want to know what kind of baseball team that chicken played for before it was killed. So okay. So you mentioned that you liked a lot of basic, like kind of like Southeast Asian Indian food, which I think is really interesting because I feel like our generation had an not an unnatural, but a very like unusually strange amount of exposure to that, because that was sort of the extremely trendy food when we were growing up in like the early 2000s. Everyone was starting to discover that going to like Thailand and, you know, South Korea and Vietnam, like seeing all these Southeast Asian countries and their food, it was like a cheap vacation destination for a lot of people. And so now that all of that's been brought back to the United States, and, you know, the food culture that reigns, I think, for a large portion of home cooks is Southeast Asian food because it's so easy to cook and it's like
so tasty too.
Yeah, and
man.
it's good. It's full
good.
of flavor, and it was the trend. It's like a nostalgia thing almost. Because like I noticed watching Anthony Bourdain, like his early stuff, it's all Southeast Asia. I'm like, no wonder we all like curry and fucking fuss as much as we do. Like everyone was going there. Like, yeah. So I just think that's interesting you say that, but I totally agree. I fucking love Indian food, any Southeast Asian food. Thai food, it can't be so spicy it kills me though. I do kind of have
it
to
can definitely
play.
be very spicy.
Yeah, my spiciness like tolerance is very much on the like Central America, Mexico, South America side. So it's not that like piercing spiciness.
Ooh, see, I'm the other way around.
It's like the slow burn spicy.
Oh, I don't like that because it lasts forever.
I love it.
I want it to be hot immediately, and I want it to go away after that. Like,
yeah,
that's my kind of heat. Whereas I feel like Latin American heat's just like your tongue's gonna burn 5 minutes after you eat.
Good. I don't know. It's addictive in a weird way, but I do like wasabi though, and that kind of like
wasabi.
Punch in the face spicy.
Yeah, it just doesn't last very long, which is what I like, because I like the initial feeling of spice where it's like this like weird nuance, and it's like a kick. Yeah. But then I like when it goes away because I don't want to deal with the pain, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I feel like though the spicy is more of like, it's not. I feel like with the Latin American spicy, it definitely it's the building of it that people like. But I think with Asian food, it's just the sheer ungodly spiciness of it, and then that like sweet relief afterwards.
Yeah,
and I totally get it. Yeah, I feel like they can't really be compared, and like that in a way, but because they're so different. But at the same time, I much prefer a slow burn than a kick in the balls, I guess. With the spicy.
Yeah, I feel like it's like heat compared to spice, you know?
Yeah. And flavor too. It's heat compared to flavor.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of Asian food, I get way too much heat and not enough flavor. And maybe that's just because I'm ordering the wrong things, or I just don't have the right palate. I don't know. But yeah, no, I think it's all good though, regardless. So I see this next one I actually really didn't know too much about with you. So it's, how does your ethnicity or cultural background influence the foods that you eat? And I guess I never really like knew your cultural heritage, or if that played a big role in your family. Did that kind of ever show up on the table at holidays or anything like that?
Sure, that's a good question. I mean, we're as American as it gets, right? We're not really we don't really identify, at least in my family, with a particular culture. We're Irish, I guess. Okay. So past the amount that we drink, I don't think there's a food that we really identify with. I grew up downstate in Illinois, so if I had to identify with a kind of food, it would be kind of home cooked Southern style meals, because I mean, you know, downstate Illinois is basically Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
So it's I ate a lot of just kind of like deep fried catfish and um, mashed
Yeah.
potatoes and gravy, hams and fried
Comfort
chicken.
comfort
Yeah, just
foods.
comfort
Yeah,
Southern food that my grandma picked up on because a lot of our family's from downstate.
for sure.
Illinois isn't the South by any means, but I think downstate Illinois starts to pick up on some of those Southern traditions just
Oh
because it
yeah.
is close to Kentucky and Missouri and places like that.
My grandmother was from Kentucky and she moved to north to like Champaign-Urbana later, but she totally had that like southern food like comfort food, only comfort food knowledge. And it does not surprise me to hear when people come from southern Illinois that they have that, because it really does. Illinois is a lot longer than people think. I feel like it dips down into the United States. So like I think that's really interesting though, that we live, basically, on Lake Michigan and up where it's really kind of near the more like cheese land with Wisconsin
Yeah,
and like, there's a lot of Canadian food influence in Wisconsin. And I think it's interesting that even in one state you get that strong, just on opposite ends. Down there it's straight like southern food, and way up here it's northern food. It's the richer kind of like more dairy based foods. But I think that's really fascinating. It's just our geography is just so strange sometimes.
yeah. It's
And
weird how it
how,
dictates what you eat, and
yeah,
I think it's largely like like a lot of my ancestors, I guess, ran farms, and I think that's the same for even like Wisconsin Dairyland. A lot of those people worked on farms or owned farms, so oftentimes I think the food comes from that culture, just like really big meals, because oftentimes these people are like working on a farm, hard labor, so they're coming back and eating the fruits of their labor, just like
yeah.
deep fried farm food.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's filling.
Yeah,
That's the thing. It's good food that is totally like a reward for that insane amount of just hard labor work.
totally.
So
Yeah, it's
yeah,
just
I
a lot
mean,
of carbs, a lot of like
yeah,
been up since 6 a.m. doing farm stuff. I can't relate, but
yeah, I
I
know.
think it's just a lot of carbs, a lot of good food to eat for
Oh
that kind of
yeah,
labor. One point to Nebraska though, you got me thinking about this, and like Southern style food, I guess, is you introduced me to chili with cinnamon rolls,
yes.
and
Oh
that
yeah,
changed my goddamn life, dude. I
it's
tell
the
people about
best.
that, and they're like, "You're fucking crazy. That can't be good." And I'm like, "Wait until you try it."
I'll never forget that. It's always fun for me to do that too, because that's such a foreign concept to people. And chili is so different anywhere you go. Like Midwestern chili is not like the same as Southwestern chili, or what you get out on the coast. Some It's all different. But in Nebraska, our chili is very like it's got like cinnamon in it and nutmeg and molasses and a lot of chili powder and garlic. So it's got a lot more of the like comfort flavor, and so it's paired really well with cinnamon rolls. And it came from a department store in my hometown. They first originated that whole. It was called oh shit, what was it called? My mother's gonna kill me for not knowing this. Oh no. I'll think of it. I'll think of it.
Ruh-roh.
It was a department store downtown in Lincoln, and they had like a veranda cafe, and it was like a big fancy restaurant, and they served chili with cinnamon rolls. That was like their signature combo.
So even like just saying it out loud, it sounds like a bizarre concept, but then like when you eat it, it just makes so much sense. You're like, oh my god, it's just sweet and salty, but even
Yeah.
better than that, it's just so
Miller and Payne. Miller and Payne was the name of the department store. That's what
there
it's
it
called.
is.
Yeah. It was downtown. Yeah, but that was just what they served. And then when that department store went out of business, there's a fast food chain in my hometown called Runza. They got the recipes for the cinnamon rolls, and they make their own chili, which is I probably like pretty similar, I guess. I don't know. I wasn't alive. But they now serve chili and cinnamon rolls. So it's a Nebraskan thing. And there was a restaurant in my hometown that served a burger that was it was a cheeseburger with like a black bean and corn salsa with cinnamon rolls as the bun, and
Woo
then it was
fucking
coated in
doggy.
chili and cheese.
Dude, I think I wouldn't be able to make it out
It
of the
was
restaurant
called
after eating
the
that.
restaurant was called Lead Belly. They went out of business, but the food was amazing, and the burger was called the Full Leaded Jacket.
That's so I would have to try it, I think, just to try it.
Yeah,
And that sounds like a mission to
I
go
ordered
on.
it on my 21st birthday, had 5 shots of tequila, and got sick as a fucking dog.
I could only imagine, that's
man.
wild.
Talked about too, people using food as a way to really connect with other people, and I mean that's why we all love food. I feel like on some level it is family to a lot and friends. That's what it means to a lot of us. And my question is like, are there people in your life that make something especially for you, or people in your life who've had a really large part of your food taste, or just like maybe family members, people that you're like, their food is always good, but it's really like a special deal if they make it?
Sure, that's another great question. I guess going back to my grandma and her chicken noodles, it's just like that recipe for me. It still tastes amazing. It's still one of my favorite foods. And she doesn't make it very often, but when she does, it's a very special occasion. So that's kind of it's a really good thing to get. My mom has the recipe too, and sometimes she'll make it. So it's just one of those recipes where I'm just like, you can't beat it, because the way they make it, it's not soup. It's so hard to describe because it's basically like a stew. It's really centers around these very thick noodles that are like hand rolled on the table, and then it's kind of this like creamy, I don't know, chicken goodness.
Chicken noodle soup is like the one meal I make it if I'm going on a date, if I'm cooking for a date, because it's the one thing that I know I make. It's probably the best thing I make is chicken noodle soup. I don't like my own recipe for it. I make my own stock. I do I use a house blend I make of spices for the chicken. Like, it's the one thing that I have narrowed down in my cookbook to like, it will never change now. Like, it's the recipe's done. I don't have to change it anymore. But I feel like yours sounds a lot like Chicken and Dumplings, which
it's a very
is it kind of close to it? Yeah.
It's just, it's like using chicken noodles, but using the same kind of like, basically like a chicken and dumplings recipe, but with noodles instead.
It still sounds fucking delicious. Especially, you cannot beat handmade pasta or anything like that. It's so, and that really to me is such a special thing, because making pasta is not just like I'm gonna make pasta now. Like, it's an ordeal. Like, it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of knowing what you're doing and being patient if it goes wrong. Like, it's just one of those things that people who do it really are committed to their love of it, and they want to go to that effort to make it for someone. So
for sure.
I think that's like a great recipe to have as a like a feel good one from a family member, because it's so classic, but also it's not like it's like not disrespectful that it's classic, because it is good. It's like undeniably the favorite soup of everyone in this country.
It's just such a good, yeah, exactly. It's just such a good, what's the word I'm looking for? Comfort food. It's just, it's warm, it's hearty, it tastes amazing. It's just,
it's good for you when you're sick, like,
it's
it's everything and that it could be. And I think that's just such a great recipe to talk about as far as a family food, because it doesn't get better than that. It
really can't. Yeah. And I'm not even a big pasta person.
Right.
Like, pasta is a food that I don't like a lot, except my favorite food that you've made personally was carbonara, which surprised me. And I think it has a lot to do with me not liking pasta a whole lot. But I remember you came over one night on a whim, and you brought just like some real basic ingredients, but you whipped up a really mean carbonara, and I was like, damn, this
I
is
think it was
really
like
good.
pancetta carbonara, and it was
Yes,
like,
yes, that's the
and
one.
the carbonara was an afterthought because I was just gonna make pasta with bacon basically. And then I was like, well, if I add some pancetta, it'll be a little bit better. Well, if I add some Parmesan cheese, it'll be a little bit better. Well, if I add some of the, like, then it evolved into pasta carbonara from there. And
It was amazing. It was like one of those, like, maybe it all ties back to, like, I'm a big fan of people who like experiment with food. It like reminds me of my dad kind of thing. So like, I think it's just like this very experimental carbonara dish that you made. And it was just like super fucking good, super greasy, but just like hit the spot.
Oh my God.
And I was just like, man, this is good. I could eat the whole goddamn bowl of this.
Well, I'm glad you liked it. Carbonara is a tough sell sometimes too, because it's eggs, and not everyone likes eggs in their pasta. They think it's raw. It's a raw egg yolk that's kind of heated and turned into a really thick sauce by the pasta. So not everyone's kind of like down with it. But I know you guys are all like, fuck it, throw more eggs. And, you'd be like all about it.
All the egg.
Put all the eggs in. So the second to last question I have, the last one's like the clickbait question, with the last like essay question, I guess, because we could call these. How do like all these different foods that you've encountered throughout your life comprise the food that you cook for yourself like every day? Not necessarily if you're cooking for like a date night or people are coming over, but just like what you make for yourself right now.
Sure. That's I guess it all ties back to the experimental nature of like how my dad learned to cook. And also, I guess pairing that with one of my roommates at college, his name was Callum. And he's from Scotland, and he learned that I didn't know how to cook for myself, and he was like appalled. Just absolutely appalled. He's like, what the fuck, man? He's like, you're like 20 years old and you don't know how to cook food. I'm like, I don't know. We can go to the cafeteria and get it. So like he taught me how to cook some.
Isn't that the most American thing though? It's like, I don't know, the food hall's there and I have a card that gets me in every day 3 times. So
that's literally what it was.
That was like college,
That's how I knew how to do it. And I was like gonna make a meal for this girl I was seeing at the time. And Callum cooked for himself all the time because he didn't get a meal pass, because he's like, why would I get a meal pass? I can make food for myself, save money that way. I didn't get that concept at the time, but he's like, what do you mean you don't know how to make? I think I made her like some kind of pasta, or I was planning to, and I ended up doing it. I just didn't know how, so I asked Callum, and he was just, again, like, he's just like, what, you don't know how to make pasta? He's like, are you kidding me right now? I was like, dude, I don't know. Like, my mom made me food all the time. I don't know. But anywho, like, he just taught me a couple really good, like, hearty, easy to make on a college budget meals, and then kind of like pairing that with my dad's ability to just like look in a pantry and be like, okay, we've got this. Let's like Google the ingredients, see what comes up, or let's just like get creative and see if it works. And I think those kind of elements combined just have me just like, I just kind of buy stuff in bulk at the grocery store, and I'll just get like some chicken breasts, spices I like, rice, vegetables, and then it's just kind of like, I'll just put it all together and see what happens. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not.
And I think that's the beauty though of cooking, is it's one of those things. It's not baking, and I think a lot of maybe not a lot of people, but people I've met in the past have always said that they don't like cooking because they always are afraid of how exact it is. And I'm like, well, that's baking. Baking is the exact one. I don't give a fuck what I put in food. Well, I do, but I don't like, I'm not willing. I'm definitely willing to just be like, let's toss this in, let's put a dash of that in, let's just keep going. And that's how I think allow a lot of people really discover the flavors they like too. And it's also kind of like amateur flavor. God, I can't talk. It's like amateur flavor layering in a way, where you're starting to discover that there can be more than just one thing you put in your food.
Totally.
So I think it's great that people do that and just are willing to go, well, I like that how you grocery shop, because that's how I grocery shop. What I'm trying to say. I go and just see stuff and buy it, and it's like, I know I can use this somehow, and we'll see how it comes out. But I mean, I think though that getting to that level, it does take it does take time and also just a willingness to kind of be inspired by what you find at the grocery store or the farmer's market or wherever you go. And I think it's a lot of fun though to cook that way, because it's kind of like a balls to the wall, let's just see what happens, and it could be fucking amazing way to cook. I don't know.
Right.
I just think
You
it's
kind of
so
let
fun.
you learn stuff, and I think that's the fun part is like, to your point of the amateur layering,
Mm-hmm.
you might add something, you might be like, oh shit, this is going to be good. And then you realize that those two flavors somehow connect in an interesting way. It's kind of fun. And that's Hannah and I for a bit, we're doing this food box. The name's slipping me now, but it was just like one of the few that are out there.
Yeah.
And that was another good way of learning how to cook interesting things. And we don't do it anymore because we just did it for, I think it was about like 2 months. But I learned a ton. Like I know how to make a risotto now, which I didn't before.
And risotto that's again, time commitment.
Oh God, you sit there and just keep
ladle
stirring.
After ladle.
Oh man, but boy is it good. But like I didn't know how to do that prior to the food box. So like that was kind of a nice way to refine my experimentation to some extent, because now I know like how to make a risotto. So like then when I go to the grocery store to buy my bulk stuff, I'd be like, ooh, I can like maybe make a risotto with these things. So I'll just like keep it in the fridge.
Yeah, that's amazing though. And I used to really rip on the pre-packed food boxes. And now though, I kind of see and I think it's because at first I thought it was kind of discouraging people to go look in a cookbook and read about it and discover it that way, which is how I did it. But seeing the outcome of it is exactly what you're saying, which is people make these foods and they are like, wow, I know how to make this one thing, but I can make it like 6 or 7 different ways now. And it's just total, and that's based upon their own discovery of cooking, not, it's just like the box is kind of like the teacher, and then what you make out of it is what you make out of it. And I think that that's such a great tool for, especially nowadays too, while we're all stuck at home. Totally. And it's like, it's not as feasible to go to Taco Bell every day on your way home to the train. And so it's like, yeah, I kind of need to learn how to, or someone might say they need to learn how to cook food that's good for them, but also not absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, 100%. It's a good way to learn it. I mean, now I'm more willing to use cookbooks and recipes online, because I think I had a general fear of using recipes, because per what you're saying, it's not baking, it's pretty easy to use a recipe, but a recipe to me reminded me of like baking, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to fuck this up somehow. But now after doing the food box, I'm like, oh, I totally can follow a recipe. It's actually quite easy.
And it's interesting too, because I think people that really stick, with the food boxes and do it constantly, because I have a couple friends that have done it all through the pandemic since March. And so that's been like their main way of learning how to cook. Like when people really start to get past the simplicity of it and kind of like they learn it, they'll see the ingredients and know how it goes. Or someone told me that they were on Pinterest looking for something. They're like, I can tell when recipes are going to suck because not everything's there. There's no salt. There's none of this. There's none of this thing. And it's kind of interesting to me how it's like, it's such a useful tool that I think a lot of us didn't really realize at first. It was just purely out of convenience. And now it's really inspired a big swath of people to be like, I can do this. And, I feel comfortable going to a grocery store and buying these things now instead of, fearing if I'm buying the right cut of meat or the right vegetable, or because it's like someone mailed it to me and I saw it, or someone
100%.
delivered it and I saw it firsthand. I know what it is. So
totally.
I don't know. I think they're a great tool. And I think that, for people wanting to get out there and cook for themselves, or because it's only for like 1 or 2 people, right?
Yeah, I think you can like pick how many you can do it for. And we did it for 2 people, but I think you could do it for like up to 4, maybe even more. Probably depends on the box, but
yeah, because I think that's useful too, because cookbooks are very much not the cooking for one thing. They usually don't cook just for one. And I think it's cool when a recipe is meant for only 1 or 2 people, because that's way more practical than, make this casserole that feeds 12 people. You'll be
Right.
eating it for 3 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Freeze
You thought
half of it.
you couldn't get sick of it until you had all of
then
these
that's
portions.
that's how we grew up with leftovers. Like, we made a fuckload of it, and it's like, you're eating this all week. Great.
Yeah.
Cool. Were there any other different things that have influenced your cooking today, or just like things you've really come to like to cook that you never really thought you would, or anything in that vein?
That's a good question. I don't know. I guess vegetables is a big thing, because I guess when I first knew you, I was a vegetarian at the time. I'm no longer a vegetarian, but
Right. Yeah.
at my Calpin I was a vegetarian, which was also really useful because, I don't know, it wasn't practical for me after a bit, but I did it for a year or two, and I learned to love vegetables, which prior to that, I would eat vegetables like when I had to, I'm like, oh my God, I haven't eaten vegetables in like 2 days or 3 days. I need to eat some. But now it's like a very big staple of my meals. My meals are typically vegetable centric with like meat as a side. So that's a big thing for me, is like just incorporating more veggies, because again, I grew up on hamburgers and mac and cheese. So, I wasn't a big veggie guy, but now after doing the whole vegetarian thing, it really kind of increased my, taste for vegetables.
I remember when you were I do remember when you were vegetarian, you used to make this like not real bacon.
Yes, benevolent bacon.
And it smelled so fucking good. I was like, this smells like breakfast food. Like, or something. I don't know. It was like all the smells of breakfast kind of like mixed into this tofu-y fake bacon. Was it tofu?
Yeah, it was seitan, which is...
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Well, it's basically the same thing, but God, that it was called benevolent bacon.
Bacon.
I swear I still get it sometimes, man. It's been a while since I've had it, but every once in a while when I see it at the grocery store, because it just tasted so good. It was all in the spices.
Yeah. And I do remember too, like, you went vegetarian, I think maybe like 2 weeks after I moved in, because you had bought a bunch of meat and you were like, I'm going to just buy this. And then once this is gone, I'm going to try being vegetarian for a while. And I remember we went to like Fresh Farms, that grocery store by our old house.
Uh-huh.
And I remember,
side note.
God, yeah, that produce section, we just like, it was just like you could stay in there for days just
so
buying
good
stuff. And, I think we really lucked out in that we had really good stores by us in that first year.
That place was very, very well located. It had a lot of great stuff next to it.
But I think it's cool though that you've come back to like not being like to eating meat, but it's not like you quit eating vegetables after being vegetarian. And I think it's honestly, I think it'd be an interesting tactic to take, maybe like for someone who wants to explore vegetables, maybe take 6 months and be vegetarian and really kind of commit to like, let's see what I can do on this front. And then we'll come back and eat meat again. I think that, I don't know, it's almost like an immersive way of discovering vegetables and how to cook them and eat them. And I don't know, I think that's such an effective way of learning how to mix that into your diet in the long run.
Yeah, it totally worked. It worked for me. I was like a meat eater through and through. And when you're so used to eating predominantly meat, you miss it a lot, but then you learn to make your vegetable dishes or meatless dishes just taste good, because you're lacking, the main course or whatever, or at least what it used to be for me. And you learn how to kind of whip up these really tasty vegetable oriented meals that you wouldn't normally with just meat. So I think it's really good. And the world could use people eating less meat, so from a climate perspective, it's just helpful for people to eat less meat,
From a financial perspective too, it's definitely, it doesn't hurt your grocery bill to not buy meat. Like,
totally, yeah.
I don't know.
It's expensive, right?
It is. Yeah, especially red meat, and that's astronomical right now. And I don't know. I always feel like the produce section, it's kind of an undiscovered trough of affordable food a lot of the time.
Yeah, you just gotta know how to cook it.
Sometimes it can get really expensive, but if you know what you're doing and you're not afraid of the possible outcomes of what you're cooking. I mean, I think the produce section is, well, I mean, my favorite section is the produce section. So I'm usually like milling around, seeing what looks really nice, what's in season, what I can incorporate. And I don't know, I just think it'd be a really cool way to learn vegetables. And like, for me, my type of person, I'd have to do it that way. Like I'd have to immerse myself in it. So maybe that's just me. But yeah, I think that's great though. And I think it's a really cool way of just like maintaining the health factor too, just knowing you're getting that into your diet, and it's like you don't have to worry about it, because I think a lot of people really do worry about that too. It's like, oh shit, I've not eaten any healthy food. But if you're just acclimated to it, it's
right. If you're just used to it, you're gonna have a very colorful plate.
Yeah. For sure. So my last thing is the clickbait question, and it's for this arc, it's what are your top 5 food loves and top 5 food hates?
Okay, I need to think about this.
Sure.
I'll start with love first, I guess. It's an easier one to go to. What do I love about food?
Oh, I thought you said the first quality is love.
Oh,
like
it could be. Can I make that my first one?
Into food. The first I was like, that's hilarious, because that's such a grandma thing to say.
Yeah, dude, I'm gonna go with it. I'm gonna make that my
great.
number one.
The number one is love, and that really, it is a good point.
That's like per our, going back to our initial conversation. So okay, we'll say love embedded into it. What a lame thing to say. God damn it. But I'm keeping it.
I'm sorry.
I ruined it
for you because I thought you were being funny.
No, we're being serious now. Wait, that's my first quality. It's got to be ingrained with love. I like richness of food, which goes to, I don't like, can sweets be rich? I don't know.
Oh yeah. I mean, I can't eat a lot of like chocolate mousse, because that is just so rich, and it's like, it's a mouthfeel thing for me. The flavor's great, but it's like, it almost makes my stomach turn a little bit if I eat it. But sweets can totally be like the rich side of things. But I think richness is great on either savory or sweet. So
yeah, if it's done well and it's not too much and it's like a little bit, I like that kind of like richness to food.
Yeah, for sure.
3. Let's see. I'm going to go with the type of food. I'm going to go curry. Curry is just the flavor profile of curry is just like my desert island.
Yeah.
Kind of food there. 4, I'm going to go crackers and cheese.
Ooh, solid choice.
I'm thinking of like a snack food, and that's like one of my favorite snacks. Even if it's like recently, Hannah and I were just munching on wheat thins and like sliced cheese.
Wheat thins are so good. I love wheat thins. Dylan, I don't think Dylan, he likes Triscuits, and I don't much care for Triscuits because I think they taste like corkboard.
Yeah, Triscuits are kind of weird, but they can make, like, you put some cheese on it, it's probably pretty good. It's a good snack.
Yeah,
food.
No, I love that though. Crackers and cheese that was like an after school snack for me too.
Yeah, same. It's good. The combination is so good. I mean, even on like something like a charcuterie, you can get super fancy with it.
Yeah,
or you can just eat goddamn Triscuits and cheddar, and it's fine.
Yeah, I love how though knowing me and you, if we went to like a swanky restaurant, like we want the sopressata, the prosciutto, the like
just
ordering a charcuterie plate. It's like, I want the man that waves me with a palm frond. I need. but then at the same night we get hammered and then go home and eat Colby Jack with fucking Ritz crackers.
Yeah, let's put some chicken nuggets on it and we've got a meal,
Fuck. Oh my god. I've never heard of that.
I'm gonna do 6 because I want to make 5 chicken nuggets just because.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, that's a solid. Okay, so number 6.
And then number 6 would be Brussels sprouts.
Nice.
I absolutely love Brussels sprouts. They're so tasty.
Do you like them like with a certain sauce or just roasted? Or I like them with sherry vinegar a lot. That's how we used to make them at the restaurant I was at. Yeah.
I bet that is amazing. I never tried that before, but
yeah, that's good. But balsamic's great too.
Yeah, I've had it with balsamic, and it's man, I love Brussels sprouts any shape and form. I've had them wrapped in bacon.
Those are fucking good.
Nick actually made
oh
those
my
for
god.
the first time for me. Yeah, I mean, honestly, the way I cook them is I just like chop them up. I cut them pretty thin. I put them in a pan of olive oil, garlic, some onions, salt and pepper, and I could just eat it for days. I love Brussels
Yeah.
sprouts. So that brings me to cons. The biggest one for me, slap dab in the middle, number one, top dog, mushrooms. I fucking hate mushrooms.
Me too.
I
Yes.
know. Mushrooms
I
are just
hate them.
gross. The smell. So that's going to bring me to 2, which is umami. I specifically don't like mushrooms. I in general don't like the like umami kind of like flavor profile.
For sure, yeah. It's a big part of it too. It's a very, I don't know, it's either like you get it with sushi, but there's also like some types of umami that it's mushroomy and gross. I totally understand. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can do like certain like I love sushi, but it's kind of the earthier flavor profiles just aren't for me. Like
fungus.
Yeah, so I'm gonna bring it even to 3. This is how much I don't like it. I'm gonna go Fidi cheese. I do not like Fidi cheeses, especially like truffle Gouda or something in that category.
Oh man, I mean, Gouda is great. I love Gouda cheese, especially smoked, because then it tastes like
smoked
bacon.
Gouda, yeah, smoked Gouda is amazing, but
there's this truffle can't go with everything, and I can totally see that kind of being gross, like a truffly, mushroomy Gouda cheese.
Oh God, I just have this very vivid memory, and I can like smell it right now. We went to Hannah and I, and I'm sorry, Hannah, for telling this story if you're listening. But my aunt is a big cheese connoisseur, and we went to Utah to go visit her and my uncle. And she had a variety of cheeses, but one of them was a truffle Gouda, and Hannah was like a super big fan of it. And I remember smelling it on her breath, like when I went to kiss her, and it was fucking just feet mushroom gross. Ugh, throw it out, get rid of it, can't do it.
Oh my God, I'm dying over here. That's too funny.
Oh God, I could still smell it. I'm not a fan of truffle.
That's like when Dylan eats Cool Ranch Doritos. It's like, don't kiss me.
Oh God,
brush your fucking teeth. I love you.
That's hilarious, but some things, man, just don't smell good.
You know, although I'm the worst too with garlic on that front. I eat so much garlic sometimes. Dylan's like, get the hell out of my space. So that's funny though. So where were we at? Are we on number 4?
I think we're on 4 now.
Okay.
4, I'm just gonna have to go with an obligatory shrimp because I'm allergic to shrimp.
Okay, for sure.
So I gotta do that. I've never really liked shrimp, which is how I never knew I was allergic to shrimp until recently.
Yeah, I think in the time I've known you, was that when you figured that out, or?
Yeah, it was like a year or 2 ago I figured it out. But I just never ate much shrimp, so I just don't think I had an opportunity to learn because I would eat it very like every once in a while I'd eat like a shrimp, or like I would get like coconut encrusted shrimp was always pretty good.
Yeah.
But it was so rare that I got that, you know?
Yeah, it was like shrimp cocktail was the only real way I'd ever had shrimp. And it was like it was like brought out at like on like the Christmas party. It wasn't like a food we had typically. I love shrimp though, but I totally understand. I mean, being allergic, obviously, it's terrible because that's like not good. But I get that though. Some people just don't eat shellfish. Like it's just like not an avenue of seafood they go to, I guess.
Yeah, and I'm only allergic to shrimp. Like I like crab. Like crab rangoon is one of my favorite appetizers.
Yes.
But just I fucking love crab rangoon.
But do you like mussels or oysters or any of the like blatant shellfish? Like
I've never the very obvious ones.
They're literally in a shell.
I've never actually tried. That's like one of the only foods I haven't tried, and I don't know. I don't know if I would ever try them. Probably
mussels are
once.
Good. Mussels are better because those cook. You don't eat those raw. So mussels are probably like a better intro, or clams too.
I would try them. I've just never been in a situation where somebody's been eating them, and I know they're pretty expensive usually as well.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's I know like my dad's gotten them once when we were out, but like he didn't get that many for how much he paid, so I wasn't gonna be like, let me have this thing that I probably wouldn't like. I wanted him to enjoy it. So, yeah, I don't know. I would try it, but Opportunities never presented itself.
For sure. So we're at the last food hate.
I gotta make it a good one then.
Are there any like sweet things you don't like? If I can like kind of, if
I
there's
pretty
any...
much like I have a pretty crazy sweet tooth. I would like eat all sweet food.
That's fair. Me too. It's like, is it? It's like I always think of it's like all I have if I need something sweet. My mom's like, all I have is this like organic fruit snack. I'm like, oh, it's disgusting, but just give it to me.
Just give it to us. I'm still down
I'll
this.
Suck on it until we go to the fucking gas station. I can buy a Three Musketeers bar. Like,
I guess I'll do an unpopular opinion one, and that is cooking, like pan cooking, like meat with butter. I don't like butter that much. I'd much rather have olive oil.
It's better for you. So I mean, you have a great defense and liking olive oil more.
Yeah,
so.
And it's like not even that. Like, I mean, just something about the smell of too much. Like when somebody heats a pan, for example, with butter and garlic, the smell just like throws me off. And it's not all the time. Like, it's not something that like repulses me like mushrooms do. Like mushrooms are one of those things where I have a really hard time with them. I can do it, but like if I had the choice, I'm always going to choose olive oil.
I cook with olive oil all the time unless I'm, unless like something I submitted, like writing I submitted was like rejected. Then it's like, I'm going to cook this butter and butter. Like, but I love the smell of butter. And it's just because it's a very cherished childhood memory of my grandmother because she made everything in butter. I wouldn't say that's unpopular because I'm sure there are people who are like, yeah, no, I don't cook things in like a dairy fat or bacon fat or
bacon fat though. I mean, that's
I cook things in bacon fat.
So that I'm not opposed to at all. That is amazing.
I have just a Tupperware frozen bacon fat in my freezer. It's like,
dude, it makes everything taste so good, especially eggs. Eggs in the morning and bacon fat or bacon grease is just like, you can't beat it.
I always make I like seafood in bacon fat, actually, like fish.
Oh,
like,
interesting.
It's a weird like land and sea flavor combination. It's like but I also really like using bacon fat for hash browns. That's kind of what I use it for.
That sounds stellar.
Or
that
pancakes. You can do it with
that
pancakes.
That also
too.
sounds amazing. Now I want breakfast food. I'm really hungry. I'm gonna go eat leftover pizza after this. Like we just talked like 2.5 hours about food. Now I'm like
food and life and I know, yeah. And I ate before this and I'm still hungry now.
Yeah, same.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much for being on this show and for being a part of the first few episodes that are gonna come out or coming out now. And was there anything else you wanted to talk about food wise or like any questions or anything you had or
no? I'm feeling pretty good about it. Thanks for having me on. It's been really fun just to kind of like chat in general because of course per COVID I feel like you and I haven't had a good time just to like chat in general, but it's also fun to like do a food themed one because again, tying it all back together, like knowing you is knowing you baking and making food for your friends. So it's like kind of a cool way to just like, I don't know, talk about the way we met essentially.
Yeah. So. And I love that. Thank you. I mean, that really, it warms my heart when people tell me that that's how they've like connected with me as a person is because of the food that I make. And I don't know. It's one of those things where I'm just like, I think it's one of those great parts of life and there's so much tradition and love wrapped into all of it. And it's just something that I'm glad that I have a group of people like y'all who are just, who aren't actually bad friends. I'm really afraid people are not going to get the title of this podcast. These are like the best friends in the world and we all fucking get together and eat and it's never a bad time. Unless one of us gets too drunk and like pukes everywhere.
Well, yeah, that's where the bad friends comes in.
That's where the bad friends comes in. Or when one of us doesn't come to a party for like 6 months. That was me at one point, though. It's like, oh, they're such a shit friend. They don't come. But we show up eventually. But
Everybody comes
anyway,
there.
well, thank you again. And is there anything you like want to promote or anything like social media? You don't really have social media. You're like,
No, I'm pretty off
pretty
the
off
radar.
the radar,
on
yeah.
stuff. Yeah, I'm just kind
Do
of
you want to promote your Reddit or your, you know?
I've got nothing, man. I've got nothing. Maybe my World of
sure.
Warcraft character, you know.
For sure, yeah. I'd like to give a huge thanks to my friend Matt for being on this show. If you'd like to support this show, don't forget to subscribe and please give the show a rating on your favorite podcast directory. I hope you join me next week for another episode of Good Food for Bad Friends from the Arcadia Podcast Network. If you'd like to get in touch with us, please email us at gfbf@arcadiapodcastnetwork.com.